All right, hey everyone, how you doing? Awesome, awesome. For several years, the New Stack did what we call the pancake breakfast. And what we would say is come have a short stack with the New Stack. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, we would serve pancakes, we'd have a panel discussion, and then we would, have kind of a roundtable conversation with everybody in the room. And that's kind of what I would love to do here today. And because in the talk that I'm presenting to you all today is about what is your future as a developer. And I hate to say it, but I don't have all the answers. But I think we all do in this room have some answers to share with each other. And so that's kind of my objective. So I would just love to get started. How many people in the room are software developers and engineers? Are. Okay. And how many would you say are junior developers? Senior engineers? Okay. How many people are looking for work right now? Okay. Great. Well, that gives me a good idea. I'm always looking for a little inspiration, and one of the people that I really find something that was really quite interesting was Ada Lovelace, and I just wanted to highlight her because I think she and other people who really pioneered what we do today, they saw an opportunity that really didn't even exist at the time. Ada Lovelace, basically, looked at Charles Babbage's machines, his analytics engines, and said, I think I can basically learn this, and I can learn this probably better than anyone in the world or anyone in my community. And I think there's a lot to say about that, but, Ada didn't do this alone. Ada had to have a community with her. She had to have people who supported her, and she had to have mentors in her life, and she did, and people like Charles Babbage served as a mentor. And I really find that's very true today. And like the value that we can get is from the people who we can look to in our own lives and in our own communities. Another example of someone who was, quite visionary of course, was Steve Jobs. But I think he says a lot about where we are today more than anyone. And I wanted to show this video so we can talk a little about what he meant by that. Oh, they're not here? Oh. Let me find out what I can do here. We'll get started in just a sec here. All right, there we are. There's Ada. And then we have Steve Jobs again. Another, they were both rebellious in their own ways. And I think it's fun to be rebellious. I don't know about you. I mean, it's one reason I became a journalist. My first job was with the Augusta Chronicle in Augusta, Georgia. And I'll never forget it because I was driving back to a county commission meeting, and I got pulled over by a state trooper, and he said, "I think it's about time you change your zip code." And that to me was like, oh gosh, I'm doing my job. I'm actually kind of making a difference. And I think that's kind of where we are today, and I think that's what a person like Steve Jobs, really represents to all of us. So I would love to ask people in the room, what did you know when you wanted to be a developer? Can you raise your hands? Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I always loved computers growing up, and I had sort of worked with them as a way of, I had basic books on an Apple II that my uncle had gotten that was being thrown out of high school, and I didn't know that was programming. I always thought it was just kind of magic that these didn't work. And I took a programming class in high school. It was Visual Basic. I took a year off, took a class in Pascal, and this was in 2005. So
Ah,
And, you know, various effects of like, I'm good at it, I enjoy it, it's a little bit ego trip because at the time I wasn't doing it as well as I could in my small little podunk town. And then finding that there were people like me that knew more and that learned is what keeps me going all these years later.
how about anyone else? Any young developers in the room? Yeah. How about in the back? Who do we have there? Yeah, right there. Yeah. Ah, that agency. And now I want to ask a question that maybe strikes to where we are today. How many of you would say you're trepidatious about the future as a developer? Okay, right, could you tell me what makes you trepidatious about it?
How new I am to it. I don't have any professional experience with it yet. I'm caught in the experience purgatory of need experience to get a job, need a job to get experience. But seeing like conventions like today and stuff, like it helps ground and give a little bit more faith for the future in development. But still caught in that purgatory makes you a little.
So what would make you more comfortable about, you know, the future? What is it that you're striving to better get a better feeling for?
I'm not exactly sure yet.
Yeah.
It's still all new. I only got out of the boot camp.
Oh, you just got out of the boot camp. Okay. How many people are recently out of boot camp? Just, okay. Anyone else who would like to talk about what they're trepidatious about? Yeah.
So I can talk about this from the other end of it. I've been getting paid to do software for 40 years now. And I'm trepidatious because at this point, I have adjusted to change so many times that my resume is really long and I don't know how to do anything. Because my toolkit has gotten so big and you use little bits of it here and there, and a day of Python, and then maybe I'm in SQL, and maybe I'm somebody with Perl or Java. And so if I have to take a programming test as part of an interview, I would absolutely love it. Which is coupled with it's difficult at this end of it. You know, it's all new and exciting. And I love talking to new folk because they remind me why I got into the first place, right? We make dreams happen, which is great. But at this end of it, the new hotness that will get me go, oh, yeah. And so I have to get over that.
Yeah. How about AI? Who's trepidatious about AI? Listen to the groans. How about this side of the room? You're on the far side there. You there? Anyone on that far side of the room would like to say something?
I'm just nervous about how that's going to affect jobs for developers.
Yeah.
Since they're already doing a lot of the grunt work that we do. And once AI becomes more advanced,
Yeah. Yeah, right there.
Echo that. I'm also, it's what like the business interprets AI as just this magical thing. And
Yeah.
let's put this into our product. And it's like, well, it's not just this thing you ask questions to and magically appear in integrations.
Yeah.
That's what has me nervous. It's the thought that this is just a snap of a finger.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Go there.
To speak from the other side of the house, as an engineering director working at an AI startup, I'm not trepidatious about AI because it's really dumb.
People with money know that.
Well, that's why we're here.
Just to kind of expand upon both sides of that is that I worry that AI is going to get good enough that people are just kind of like, well, it's close enough. It may not be as good as what a human can do, but it's close enough and it's a hell of a lot cheaper.
Right.
That's what I would do.
I'm really worried about junior developers, people who are just coming in. They're going to have it very hard.
Yeah. That's good. This is a good conversation. I want to play this from Steve Jobs because I kind of just think it's fun to like hear what he had to say, and this is back in 1986.
Morning. Introductions are really funny. They paid me $60, so I wore a tie. How many of you own an Apple? Any? Or just any personal computer? Uh-oh. We're going to sell those 10 million computers in '86, whether they look like a piece of shit or they look great. You know, by '86, '87, pick a year, people are going to be spending more time interacting with these machines than they do interacting with their big automobile machines today. People are going to be spending 2-3 hours a day sometimes interacting with these machines. So we had 3 options. One was to do nothing. And as I mentioned, we're all pretty young and impatient, so that was not a good option. The second one was to put a piece of garbage computer in a book. And we can do that, but our competitors are doing that, and so we don't need to do that. The third option was to design the computer that we want to put into the book eventually, even though we can't put it into the book now. But we're solving the problems of injecting some liberal arts into these computers. That's what we're trying to do right now. Let's get proportionally spaced fonts in there. Let's get multiple fonts in there. Let's get graphics in there so that we can deal in pictures. And where we've got to get to is where people 3-4 years from now are using these things and they go, wasn't this the way it always was? The fact that computers and society are out on a first date in the 80s. We have a chance to make these things beautiful, and we have a chance to communicate something through the design of the objects themselves. We feel that for some crazy reason we're in the right place at the right time to put something back. And what I mean by that is most of us didn't make the clothes we're wearing, and we didn't cook or grow the food that we eat, and we're speaking a language that was developed by other people. We use a mathematics that was developed by other people. We are constantly taking. And the ability to put something back into that pool of human experience is extremely neat. And I think that everyone knows that in the next 10 years, we have the chance to really do that. And we can look back, and while we're doing it, it's pretty fun too, but I mean, we can look back and say, God, we were a part of that.
I really like that. I mean, to me, it's like says, like, you know, I'm trepidatious too. I'm a journalist, and so, like, we get lots of questions about, is AI going to take over your work? And, you know, AI hasn't taken over my critical thinking yet, and I don't think it will for a while. And I read every day about AI getting stuff very, very wrong, as a person who works for the AI company can probably attest, where they get so wrong that, like, for instance, doctors are using technologies like Whisper, and the Whisper is like transcribing the wrong information. That's a bug. That's a big bug. And those are the bugs that I think we're going to start to see trying to be fixed over the next 10 to 20 years. Whoops. I'm going to go through these slides quickly because this basically says a lot of what we really know. But one reason we're here is because of Linux, and open source is going to stay around for a long, long time. And so I think what you'll hear from this group here is that it's important to network in those communities and really getting to know something. And like at the New Stack, what we do is we take contributed articles from people from all kinds of backgrounds, and they'll explain something. They'll explain GraphQL. I talked to someone yesterday who was like talking about how they've just loved our kind of archive of stories on GraphQL. We depend on these experts, and so many other people do as well. It's your voice that really matters, that will determine your future. And we see it all the time at the New Stack, because what we try to do is really dive down into topics. And this is one. This open source question is a big one. But where are we now? You know, we saw the Great Resignation, you know, followed by these massive layoffs at tech companies. We're now in this era of ChatGPT-3 and generative AI disruption. And now we're looking at open source license changes, which have more of an abstract impact, but I think today with like the news about, you know, the defining open source AI, that raises a lot of questions for us. You know, as journalists, that raises questions like, well, does that mean that the people have been able to extract so much out of open source are now just going to be able to do it a lot easier? I don't know. But there's such an opportunity still to learn so much, and I really think that's what we're going to get to in this panel discussion. How many people would say that they're a bit disenchanted right now with the way the tech space is looking? Way in the back, or right up here. Can you tell me why you're disenchanted?
I mean, all the AI stuff that is just another bubble, just like the crypto thing we had a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
The cycle of bubbles.
What would you like to see then? What would like, and how do you work yourself through that?
I don't go work for companies that are like part of bubbles. It's very annoying when you're job hunting and all the like things that you're seeing are like 90% of them are where you're like, no, that's gonna crash in a year.
Right. Over there.
I feel like for me, like the strategy of like companies taking right now is to come after us.
Hmm.
Our platform is taking over. They got a lot of budget. They increase their teams. That takes over my role. Offshoring with a lot more that's coming out. That strategy as well.
You know, the panel, I think, I'm sure you're probably like listening to this quite intently and thinking like about these people. So I think this is the kind of questions we want to really start to get to in this discussion we have just coming up. You're right, but software engineer jobs did grow fast, but they have started to plateau a little bit. But machine learning and AI roles are increasing in demand. And one thing that I would look at is like when I look at the news stack, you know, and the stories that are trending, the stories that are trending relate to generative AI, and they relate to other large communities that are important to people in their work. So when we started the news stack in 2014, we started talking about containers. Who uses containers in this room? Yeah, almost everyone, right? So like that shows you right there that there's a large community of people out there who are continuing to try to find better ways to use a Docker file, for instance. But machine learning and AI are areas that, you know, do seem like the field does feel like it's going to take us over, but it's also there's a great need for the work that we do. These are just some of the top professions that look to be growing. You can see that AI machine learning is right at the top. Who wants to work for a tech company these days? Gosh, isn't that interesting? That's so interesting. Who would like to work in some other industry outside of tech? In the back there, sir. Like, what is your interest in working outside of tech? Okay, great. What are some other fields that people want to work in? Any hands? Like any other markets right there?
Journalism.
What is it about journalism you like to do?
I think the world's changing so fast and we want people to document.
Okay, excellent. Yeah?
Kind of the intercept. Well, I want to work in the urban engineering space.
Okay.
Like urbanism and bikes and walkability and stuff like that. And that's kind of the space I want to move into, but it's not as big of a space as tech and not as many openings.
Thank you.
My internship was with healthcare, and I was interested in how it's upgrading some of their
See, yeah,
like gather
that's great. So you see a future in that? Very well. That's great to hear. So let's get to our panel discussion. I have Taylor Desseyn. He's a vice president of global community at Torc, and he can tell you more about Torc. Jessica Kerr, who's an engineering manager, developer relations at Honeycomb, and Jessica can tell you more about Honeycomb. And Lisa Shissler-Smith, an engineering manager at Netflix. Hey. Well, why don't you all give a quick introduction of what you do, and if you want to provide any commentary on what you've heard, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, my name is Taylor Desseyn. I am VP Global Community at Torc. Basically, what that means is I'm a professional friend maker. Torc is a talent marketplace. We do all things in tech development, on the functional side, you name it. I've been a traditional recruiter back when I was recruiting .NET web forms. So I've seen the internet change pretty drastically, and I've seen all the hype. I can resonate with you on a lot of different topics, but I'll pass it off.
Hi, friends. I'm Lisa Shissler-Smith. I've been an engineer since before there was a Google, so I've been around the block a time or two. At Netflix, I manage a team called Technology Lifecycle Innovation, which is a word salad that roughly equates to Netflix's digital janitors. We are concerned with maintaining and deprecating legacy systems so that we can continue to grow into the future. So I have lots of thoughts about people at both ends of the spectrum, experience-wise. But I'm also here to tell you that I hire primarily for pragmatism and empathy. I don't care necessarily what languages or frameworks you have. I need you to be able to solve problems with code. Jessica.
I'm Jessica Kerr, Jessitron online, and I work at honeycomb.io because it's the best observability platform. But I care about observability because I care about socio-technical systems. And I think of socio-technical systems, especially software teams, developers, and they're running code as part of the same learning system. And soon, developers, they're running code and generative AI as part of a socio-technical system. And how do we make this run more smoothly and make the flows of learning even better?
That's great. After listening to the group here, there's some trepidation. And Lisa, I would love to start with you because I've thought a lot about what you were saying in our conversation the other day. And we often think of innovation. When people think of the future, how many of you think of innovation? Right? Well, Lisa said the other day that when she's thinking about innovation, she's thinking about what she can delete. And I think there's something to say about that because it's a principle that we hear often in writing. What can you delete from what you just wrote? How can you make that tighter? How can you make it better? How can you make it more efficient? So Lisa, I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Absolutely. You're singing my song. Thank you. As you might imagine, with a multi-decade-old code base, we've got a lot of stuff. And people talk about throwaway code all the time, but I can guarantee you after looking through our repos, we throw nothing away. So think about it like a garden. You need to weed and tend that garden and get rid of the things that aren't serving you anymore so that you can grow what you need. But the legacy systems and software that we support are also super vital because they keep the lights on. My team is responsible for systems that handle 85% of Netflix's streaming traffic. And without them, we couldn't keep the lights on to get to the innovation. So there's a balance there. It's exciting to work on the new bleeding edge stuff, but if you don't understand the systems that we worked on in the past, if I'm honest, it's all the same thing. Pattern recognition is very strong. So if you can learn patterns, you can survive in any system. It really doesn't matter. All languages are intrinsically the same. They're just wearing a different T-shirt. So get used to being able to decompose something into its problem space. Then you have the room to innovate. Innovation is really, how do I solve this same problem, but in a different way? How can I take the things that I've already learned and leverage those to bring out a new way of doing it? Maybe it's more efficient. Maybe it takes less time. Maybe it takes less compute cycles. Maybe it costs less money to maintain. But at the end of the day, it's the same problem over and over again. At Netflix, we're trying to get a giant amount of content out to a giant number of humans and devices simultaneously now because we're into live. Stay tuned. Christmas Day should be fun.
Awesome. Taylor, I wanted to ask about the more practical aspects of the futures of development. Is the future of development for people in this room, about remote work? Is it about fractional work? Is it about full-time work? people can go out and they can say, yes, I'm pragmatic, I'm empathetic, and I'm willing to work at home. Or what? I mean, talk to me about kind of what the trends you're seeing in the people who you talk to every day about what people should be thinking about when they're out looking for a job.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I want to go with Lisa. Just what you just said was wonderful. And if you went to my talk, you would see the similarities there. So, no, I think right now flexibility is key. How many people in here went through the job search change in the last 3 years? Raise your hand. Yeah, exactly. So it right now is a crazy time. I've spent the last 2.5 years in the talent marketplace space, which is kind of a different area than the agency recruiting space. So I've kind of been on both sides of it now, which has been really good for me to get more of a holistic view of the market. And there's been a lot of fractional stuff lately, right? A lot of hiring managers want, hey, I need an engineer for 10 hours a week, 15 hours a week, right? And we've been able to help a lot of full-time engineers, like 40 hours a week salary, kind of start their freelancing careers. And so I think it's important right now in this market to be flexible, to be patient, to be graceful. I talked about in my talk this morning about being kind to people, deploying empathy. I think that's one of the biggest things that I consistently hear in talks at conferences from other engineering leaders, from other recruiters like myself in the community, is that flexibility. If a recruiter asks you to do something and you trust that recruiter, there's a difference between the shitty recruiters out there, let's be honest, right? But like, if you trust a recruiter, listen to what they have to say, be flexible. I know so many engineers out there, they're like, I want this amount of money and that's all I'm going to do. And I'm like, how long have you been on the job search for? And they're like, 1.5 years. And I'm like, there's a huge gap here. So again, my thing, the future when it comes to this stuff is I think a lot more fractional work's going to happen. I think the idea of full-time salary is not as safe anymore as it used to be 3 to 4 years ago. And so I think a lot of engineers are more open to contracting and freelancing, which I think hiring managers need to be aware of to scale up their engineering teams quicker.
Jessica, I'd like to ask you about, about AI tools and how they're affecting your work and how, when you're thinking about, your future and the work you do, how you'll continue to use those tools and how they may impart some insight for the people here.
Right. So I noticed there was a lot more trepidation about AI than general trepidation, which I think is completely reasonable. And there's also came up two different aspects of AI. There's how do we incorporate AI into our software, observability. But more interestingly, how do we incorporate AI into our development lives? And there's kind of there's a cost here of if AI can do the grunt work of writing code, then what's left for us? Well, specifically, what's left for junior engineers? Because so much of software development is deciding what the code should do. And they can't take that away from us. I mean, as humans, we know it's important. We're fitting the code into the situation that we're in, the human situation, and that critical thinking is still ours. And if we can tell it very specifically what to do, then great, it can write the code. And that's senior developer work, and I feel like we're kind of all asked to enter as a senior developer now. So we have to learn even more, even faster. Now, on the positive side, AI can help us learn faster. Because if I just need a bash script to do something and I'm gonna run it once or twice, whatever, AI just generate that for me. Thanks, Claude. But if I'm getting good at Golang, for instance, at Honeycomb we have a lot of Go code. I'm not super comfortable with Go. Some people really like it. But when I'm looking at this Go code or asking it to write some Go code, which is much harder in context, I can ask it, what does this mean? And it can tell me what that construct is. I'm like, how do I catch exceptions here? And it's like, well, in Go, that's called a panic and blah, 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 blah. It can explain the things in detail. It doesn't just write code. It can really explain it, and it can explain what's different about this language. I can be like, well, I understand Java and TypeScript pretty well. What the heck is this? And it can tell me, it can give me it writes a blog post. That's exactly what I needed right then. So we can use the AI to learn faster, and then our critical thinking skills become immensely more valuable.
I would love to get a question from someone in the audience who's like trying to find a job. What are the problems that they're facing? People who are just looking for advice, might be able to talk about, working full-time or part-time, whatever. Anyone have a question that they'd like to ask? This is your chance. Here, okay, yeah.
I've heard basically that at big companies, the hiring process is broken. That like a big company like NVIDIA can't even process the resumes that they're getting, and the only way in the door is to know somebody. So, do you guys feel that that's true? Are the AI filtering tools like just killing people's chances of getting jobs at these companies?
I appreciate. I appreciate that he handed me the mic. So what I can tell you is that we have just transitioned applicant tracking systems, and it is not going well. No. Here's another dark industry secret. All ATSs suck. I apologize to anyone who works in that industry. They're all bad. It's just what pain you're willing to take on. So we're transitioning from one to another. I don't know if the system is broken. I can tell you that having someone refer or recommend you is always going to be an advantage, for sure. But what I can also discourage is don't cold approach somebody and say, refer me. That will likely result in either crickets or some sort of vehement response along the lines of, I don't know you. So approach with a question or a curiosity. Can you tell me what it's like to work at Netflix? I can talk about that for hours. And maybe in the course of that conversation, you can tell me what you're looking for, and I can understand a little bit better, and I can help you navigate that process. I only make referrals for people with whom I've actually worked, because at Netflix, we don't have a paid referral system. My only benefit is getting a stunning colleague, and so I will only recommend people that I know could handle those jobs. But I'm happy to talk to you about navigating that system, and I'm happy to talk to you about like what your next steps could or should be. So if you find somebody on Netflix on LinkedIn who has a job that looks like something you want, ask them a question. Also, hot tip, that's what networking is. You're already in a space where you can do that. So networking is key, but you're doing the thing right now. You've gone to a place where there's people, talk to those people. Do that repeatedly. You can do that virtually as well. You can put time on anyone's calendar virtually. People are extremely generous with their time. Take advantage of that. The more connections you make, the more people can recommend you for positions that they've seen open up. The more people you know, the more opportunities will present themselves. It is a numbers game, friends. So meet as many people as you can. You already have, look to your left and your right and front and behind. You already have 4 people now that you've just met. Talk to them more. Get together. Hang out in those spaces. Volunteer for an open source project. Get your name out there. You have to do something to differentiate, and I'm sorry it's like that. I feel it's performative in nature in places, and I don't love that, but it's the reality of the situation. The more people you know, the more opportunities you will find.
How about, anyone have any questions they'd like to ask? I want to make sure people have questions. They have one in the back, way back, yeah. Jessica?
I didn't hear the question fully.
I guess the question is like moving from one industry to another and what you recommend?
So like moving into tech? Great. At Honeycomb, we love to hire people who are on their second career. One of our company values is we hire adults. And I mean, we mean that in terms of like responsibility, but also it's pretty much true. And our junior engineers are mostly adults because they came from another industry. I think one thing that people can bring is understanding the business, Because if you have, like, I don't know, if you're running a fake e-commerce site, ChatGPT can write you some really good code for that. But if you're deep in healthcare, there was something about it's mistranscribing doctors because these are technical terms. These are specialized terms. If you're in the biological sciences, you have some knowledge that not every developer has. I saw on the job board out there, it's looking for someone with 3 years experience in fintech. If you can find something related to your previous career, then you are going to knock it out of the park as a software developer there because you understand the customer. And in general, for all of us, the more we understand the business, not just the code is a prerequisite. You have to understand it deeply. But then what makes you stand out is understanding the business. If in an interview you can talk about the company and how they make money and what matters to their customers, then they're going to be like, wow, this is someone who can really make a difference here.
I want to give this to Taylor next because this is a very practical thing here too. But that transition, that standout point, knowing something about another industry is key. But every job announcement is a problem. I, the manager, have. You are that solution. Answer the question, how can I solve your problem? And you will stand out amongst the crowd.
Taylor, yeah.
I mean, y'all just say everything so well. Like, I just don't want to go like retweet,
Well,
right?
I have a question for you then, Taylor.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and
I mean, literally all of this. I mean, literally, like, yeah, if Kane and I talked this morning, it's everything I just said. So, yeah, that was great.
No, Taylor, some people ask about broad skills versus deep skills. Yeah. And, and it seems to me like there's enough spaces that we cover that there's a need for deep skills, right? Like infrastructure as code is like going through a major transformation right now, for instance. There's lots of other spaces too. What's your perspective on broad versus narrowly defined focuses?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think, I'm sure everybody has in engineering leadership has their own kind of thought on this. I've seen it go from like specialist to generalist to back to specialist. Like right now, what I've seen is like hiring managers need to hire somebody right now who have this skill set, solve this problem right now. And just like Lisa was just saying, in the interview stage, if you can clearly define what they're looking to hire for and say, hey, you are hiring for this, I have this, this is why you need to hire me, it's going to be a lot easier for Lisa to be able to pull that trigger because you explicitly explain how you can provide value. Most of y'all, from my experience, just gets in the interview and like all y'all black out and just like kind of like just go, okay, yeah, oh, great, sounds good, okay, thanks. And like you get off the call, you're like, so how was it? And you're just like, I don't know. And he was like, well, what happened? Like, as a recruiter, I have to like debrief with all of y'all, and it's just like, blah, right? And so for me, it's like really understand what you're walking into, have specific questions, know your background, and then, man, when you can get to that point, that's huge. And again, specialist right now is everything, at least what I've seen.
I would love to just ask, would anybody like to stand up and tell us about the job that you're looking for? And any advice from the panelists here?
Also, speaking about networking, come to Torc's meetup tonight too.
Or just
we have a networking event
or
tonight.
just stand up and tell us what you do. I'd be curious.
Everybody wants to take a nap.
There you go.
I work with data. I work at Verizon, and we'll keep working with data. Currently, I do data engineering at PMO, cybersecurity at Verizon. I'm looking to try and do something a little bit more, maybe be a value team. I've applied to dozens of jobs within Verizon in the last year. Don't get many calls back, so I can give some advice there.
Great. Anyone else?
Yeah, sure. So currently I work for a company that was too cheap to pay the $150 for me to come here, so I'm here independently. And for me, it's kind of I don't believe in the work that I do. I feel like it's just lining a billionaire's pocket. I don't feel like what I do actually contributes to the product in any meaningful way. And I'm kind of tired of the mercenary mindset of being a developer, of doing it for money. And in talking with a friend of mine, who's like, yeah, you don't want to be a mercenary, you want to be a public servant. And I don't know how to square
Is there a way to square that circle?
Do you need a hug first? Or a hug afterwards? I'll give you a hug afterwards.
I think that's a really good question, and I think I don't know if you can 100% square that circle in a capitalist economy because shit costs money, and I'm sorry about that. But I feel like we are here at an open source conference, and there are plenty of places where you can devote cycles to things that matter. And so if you're not finding that in your day-to-day, look for it here within this open source community, and then leverage that to get your next job.
Or your first job.
Or your first job, exactly. Volunteer with something that matters to you, and you can make that transition.
I do have one thing real fast. This is something that I've personally dealt with over the last 2 years, and we can sidebar if you want. But like how much is your happiness being taken away from you because of the money you're making? Right? And this is like a larger conversation. I know we're like really close to wrapping up here. I have taken up until recently a 40% pay cut. As a recruiter who found himself recruiting engineers and being in community with engineers for the last 2.5 years, which industries got hit the hardest? Engineers. So guess whose 75% pay structure was commission based off engineer placements? Me. And so I've had this conversation with my wife a ton, and I think I've talked with a lot of engineers about this, a lot of my friends, about how much is it really worth your sanity, right? If you can't go walk with your partner at the end of the day because you're too busy taking calls, right? One of the last places I worked, I've only worked 2 other places, you can figure it out, but like basically like put stand-up calls at 6:30 p.m. Central. Like I have 2 kids, right? Like I'm not going to do that, right? And that was one of the reasons why I left. And so like I challenge everybody in here, like money's great, but also family's more important. And so I just want to encourage everybody that, because I know it's a very hard thing and I've wrestled with it. And so if you can break away and take a few grand less, but be able to like actually take a breather during the day, I think it's worth it.
Jessica would. Well, we're just about towards the end of the discussion here, and maybe, Jessica, I can just ask you for just how you would, sum up to this room, like if you could give them any thoughts on when they're leaving here today about their future, what would you say?
Maybe it's not the future that you expected. Maybe it's not the one you wanted 3 years ago. But I had a very wise friend who said, I find it useful to look at what's in front of me and adjust my expectations to match. You know, the jobs that are available are not the same. The ways that we're going to learn what we need for that job, they're not the same as they were, but they are interesting. So try something. Could be fun.
Great. Lisa, any thoughts?
Yes. I tend to get itchy when someone asks me, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I'm like, I don't know, what do you got, right? So like, don't be held down by the weight of anyone else's expectations. I couldn't have imagined at any point in my past working at some place like Netflix, and yet I do. So please don't let anybody else's opinion of you, or sometimes even your own opinion of yourself, hold you back from what that next thing is. Just take a chance. When someone offers it to you, perhaps that is that thing that you're looking for to make a change. Be open to all the possibilities, like Jess said. Maybe consider something new, but also talk to the community. Find your allies. We're better when we're together. I created a team called Flamingo Team 6 around the flock principle. Flamingos are filter feeders, so one flamingo is eating and the rest of them are looking out. Find the people you can hang out with that will look out for you, and they can be real in life or virtual, but like find that crowd and hang out with them, and they will give you the support you need as things change around you.
Just as a last note, the new stack has an open contributor policy. So if you have something you'd like to write about, check out the new stack, check out what is being written on the new stack by contributors, and give us a shout. We'd love to hear from you.
Can I have one more thing?
Yeah.
I have 4 words. Network your ass off. That's all I got.
Yeah, and in that note, can you guys look to the left of you and to the right of you and shake the person's hand who's like right there? All right. Say hello, have a little chat, and have a great show, everyone.